I would like to introduce our resource person, Rohit Jat sir. Rohit sir is native to Bangalore, but currently is working at Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment, which is located in the Sikkim. Sir work include developing and managing databases projects in the region, data analysis and promoting citizen science, and also Sir work on GIS platforms to visualize and analyze biodiversity information. Sir is participating in citizen science projects for over 10 years now. Sir main interest is on moths, but also Sir collect and document information regarding all plants and animals which are found in the northeastern side of India. It's our fortune to have Sir along with us, and it is a good opportunity to gain and know regarding the moths. Welcome you, Sir, and welcome you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sir will be starting a talk now. If you people have any questions, and like the audience, if you have any questions, you can drop it down in the chat box, and I'll be checking them regularly, and we can discuss all of them at the end. Uh, will that be okay, sir?
That sounds fine.
Yeah, great. Thank you, sir. Please do start.
Sure. So I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. So at the beginning, I need to just clarify, I'm definitely not an expert. I am very interested in moths. I have been documenting moths for more than 10 years, but I don't have a background in biology. I came in as an amateur, and I believe most of the people here also are not experts in anything, are interested in learning as amateurs. So I've made my presentation with that in mind. So hopefully you all will find this helpful. And yeah, I will try and answer as many questions as I can at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll begin. So I titled this talk, Introduction to Moths and Citizen Science. And through this presentation, I want to show you how anybody can photograph and identify moths around them. Okay. So this is just a brief outline of what I'm going to be presenting today. So yeah, I'm not going to read this, but this is the sequence of the slides I'm going to be showing you. So let's just get into it. First of all, what is a moth? So moths and butterflies are members of the insect order Lepidoptera. So Lepidoptera is the scientific name, and it's a combination of two words. Lepi means lepidop, means scale, and petra means wing. So these are insects which have scales on their wings, and the key characters that they have is, first is they undergo complete metamorphosis. So what that means is they have two distinct stages of life. So from this image, you can see the one is an egg, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are caterpillars. So this is the first life stage. Then they go through a pupa or a cocoon phase, after which the adult emerges. So this is called complete metamorphosis because there is a complete change between the immature form and the mature form. So for example, we humans, we don't have complete metamorphosis. Like a child is different from an adult, but it's basically like a mini adult. Whereas if you look at a moth, the caterpillar looks nothing like the moth, like the adult. So that is complete metamorphosis, and all moths and butterflies have this life cycle. Second is they have scales covering their wings and bodies. So this, I'm sure many of us as children may have tried to catch a butterfly or catch a moth, and you would have seen some powdery kind of thing come on your fingers. So that is actually the scales. So these are some images which are from an electron microscope of the wing of a moth. So as you can see, it looks almost like the tiles on a roof. And this is what actually the wings of moths and butterflies are transparent. It is the scales on top of the transparent wings which give it their color and their patterns and everything. Proboscis. Them drinking water or collecting minerals from that. Only liquids can be eaten by adults. The immature forms, the caterpillars, they have chewing mouth parts, and that is why you'll see them either eating leaves or stems or fruits or anything like that. So it's only the caterpillars which can eat solid food. The adults only have liquid food. So Lepidoptera is one of the largest groups of insects or largest groups of organisms in the world. So there are, right now, there are over 2 lakh species which have been described from around the world. Over 20,000 species are known from India. And by some scientists and experts have done some calculations, and they've estimated that there might be just as many species left to describe. So there may be around 150, 1.5 or 2 lakh species still unknown, which could be described in the future. So just to give you some context, if you look at mammals, there are only 6,400 species of mammals in the whole world, and India has only 410 species of mammals. Or if you look at birds, there are 10,000 species of birds in the world, and India has 1,300, I think 1,350 odd birds. So the number of species in these groups is very, very large. So these are divided into 46 superfamilies and 126 families. And out of these 46 superfamilies, one superfamily is all the butterflies, and the remaining 45 is moths. So we generally, when we butterflies are known to everyone, they are, lots of people like them, we see them, we find them pretty. But if you actually look at it, there's almost 45 times the number of superfamilies. But generally, there's around 10 to 15 times the number of species of moths as there is butterflies. So that's just to note. So quickly, I'll just quickly run through what are some of the differences between butterflies and moths. So like I said, both of them belong to the same group, Lepidoptera. So there's one superfamily of Lepidoptera called Papilioidae, which is all the butterflies, and all the other superfamilies are the moths. So one difference is the antennae, the shape of the antennae. So the antennae is this part which sticks out of the front of the head of all insects. Many different types. They can be long and pointy. They can be, sometimes they are like feathers, but only on one side. For moths, the end of the antennae will be pointed. Butterflies. Skippers or Hesperidae, it is little L-shaped, a little bit like a hockey stick. So none of the moths can be a variety of different types, but it's never like either a bulbous at the end or like a hockey stick, like straight and a slight bend at the end. One way to differentiate. So again, I said there is 2 lakh species. So when you have so many species, generally they all then there is somebody or the other who breaks the rule. So whenever there is any general rule about, oh, this is what moths do, or this is what butterflies do, there will be 1 or 2 exceptions among them. So next is the wing position when resting. So generally, butterflies sit with their wings closed. So it's like the body will be here, and the wings will be closed over the body. Whereas moths sit with the wings open, spread out on either side of the body. So like I said, there are exceptions. There are some butterflies which sit with their wings open, and some moths which sit closed. This is a good character to use to differentiate between butterflies and moths. One more is nocturnal versus diurnal. mostly active during the nighttime, mostly active during the daytime. So most moths are nocturnal, whereas most exceptions happening. Yeah, there are still exceptions where that can be reversed as well. Life cycle. This is the phase in between the caterpillar and the adult. Butterflies, the pupa is called a chrysalis. So normally it will be smooth and shiny outside, like or a hairy case, and inside that will be the chrysalis. This is one slightly smoother kind of a look to them, whereas moths look a little bit more furry, a little bit more fuzzy. For lots of moth families, the size of the scale is much bigger. So most social that it looks, I mean, it's like a powder and it looks very shiny in appearance. Some of the functions that...
Can I interrupt, Rohit?
Yes, sorry.
In the previous slide, we lost you on the few things. Can you just, not all of them, just the last two things. What was this? Pupae and general appearance.
Okay, sure. Sorry about that. I think it's been raining here, so I think my internet is a little...
Yes, you're cutting off. Yeah, your voice is breaking.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
This is better now. Let's continue.
Okay.
Thank you.
In case anything like that happens, please let me know, because I'm in presentation mode. So
Actually, your voice is not audible now. Hello.
in butterflies, normally the pupa is...
So you're breaking up in between.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure if I can do anything about that. Is it clearer now?
Yes, you are audible.
I'm audible. Okay. Okay, so it seems like the internet cuts out whenever I say pupae. So let's see if I can just get through this again. So the pupa is the phase between the immature phase and the adult phase. So that's between the caterpillar and the adult. So in butterflies, normally the pupae is something called a chrysalis, which is what you see over here, the green one. It is, it is a hard, shiny kind of an object, and the individual is maturing inside this. Whereas for moths, generally they form a cocoon, which is either a cloth-like or a hairy, how do you say, a substrate inside which the chrysalis is formed. So this is again one distinguishing factor between the two. And finally, there is the general appearance, where butterflies appear, their wings appear quite smooth and quite shiny, whereas moths very often look little hairy or little fuzzy. So, like I said, all of these are, there are exceptions to all of these rules, but these are general, useful rules of thumb to differentiate between butterfly and moth. So, I'll just go to the next slide. What is the importance of moths? So one thing which the adults do is lots of them are very important for pollination. There are two moths. On the left, it's called a hawk moth, and on the right, it's called a wasp moth. Both of them are they are actually taking nectar from the flowers, but in the process, they're collecting pollen, and they will transfer pollen from one flower to the other. In the process, providing the service of pollination for the plants. Defoliators. So the even though the adults are what are most visible to us, most of the time the adults don't grow. So once the adult appears from the pupa, that is the entire size it's going to be. The adults are drinking. That nectar is just for energy, for flying around. It's not for growth. Whereas the caterpillars, they grow significantly. If you remember my first slide, they start from a tiny egg and huge ecosystem service or function that they provide. That in lots of ecosystems, that the largest defoliators, the largest groups of defoliators are actually Lepidopteran. Forest, like say the forest in the Western Ghats. You have elephants, you have wild boar, you have deer, you have lots of big herbivorous animals. But if you actually sit and see how much biomass, how much leaves are eaten by all these mammals, and how much leaves are eaten by these lepidopterans, these moths will be eating many times the amount of leaves that the herbivores eat. And it's not because it's because they eat so much and because there are so many of them. So even from a forest dynamics point of view, from what is actually contributing to the loss of leaves in the forest, the ability for new plants to grow, all of those things, butterflies and moths, the caterpillars have a huge role to play in that. So defoliation is a very important role they play. In some instances, these can be considered pests as well, because like for example, in lemon, there are some butterfly caterpillars which can completely eat all the leaves of that plant. Very few species which are involved in this, but defoliation is one of the biggest impacts they have in an ecosystem. There are also very important decomposers. So there are many moths which don't eat live leaves, but which eat the leaf litter, which eat leaves which have fallen to the ground. So this is again a very important service they provide. One is they eat the leaves and then they pass it out. Helps the leaves to decompose faster and converts the dead leaves into soil much quicker. So it can be considered to be creating manure as well. They are also very important prey items. So there are many species which eat moths. There are here just as indicate as examples. So here we have a bird which is eating a big moth. We have a gecko or a lizard which is eating a moth. Moths, and one of the largest moths. So a huge percentage of what lots of the carnivorous bats eat are actually moths. This is a very interesting illustration which was made by this person called Chris Kratzer, a book, and this is line drawings of the general shape of lots of the moth families. So in this one, everything that is within this red box are butterflies, and everything outside are moths. So as you can see, the diversity among moths is much larger than butterflies. So I will be selecting 5 sets of images from here and showing you more examples of moths from those families. So at the end of this presentation, I will perhaps with the WCG team, I will share some links. So they can probably put it up on their website or Facebook so that you all can directly download these images, because this is a open access. It's a free image which is available. And I think it's a very useful image especially for learning how to identify some of these species. So the first family that I'd like to talk about is this family called Geometridae. So Geometridae, the name basically means geo is the world and metridae is to measure. So it gets its name because of the way some of the caterpillars move. So they move, I don't know if you can see the video, but they move like this. to measure the ground or measure whatever they're going on. So that's why they get the name Geometridae. So it is a large family. Like in the world, there are more than 23,000 species in this family Geometridae. 1,500 plus species known. The moths generally have very thin, slender bodies and broad wings, and the wings are held at rest away from the body. So this is some examples. They are normally large-sized moths, and very often they are quite colorful. And from my experience, a lot of species in this family have green in them. And green is a color which I have noticed is not so common among moths. So quite often, if you see a green moth, it's quite likely that it belongs to Geometridae. But there are many, I mean, as you can see already, there are many species which aren't green also. So as you can see, there are a wide range of patterns and colors which are there in this group. From, I mean, just based on my observations, this is one of the most common families that you will encounter. And they have a relatively general shape. So other than this individual, all of them have a large forewing and a broad forewing, which is not so long, and a smaller hindwing. So you'll see the same thing here, here, and here. This has the same thing, only the forewing is overlapping with the hindwing a little bit, so it's hard to see. Next, we have a family called Erebidae. So this is another very large family of moths. This one, I think, has over 24,000 species in the world. So I was trying to find out, but I couldn't get a number of how many species were there in India from this. But there's definitely species of Erebidae. So if you look at the hindwing clothes. So they use this to startle predators. So when a predator comes nearby, they will quickly open their forewing, and this sudden bright color will scare some predators away. Also, lots of them have eye spots. So this is another way to trick predators into thinking that, so actually the eye is the small black thing over here. The bird may think, oh, this is something much bigger than me. So maybe I shouldn't mess with that. Also, the eye spots are another form of defense, because in case some predator is going to attack, it'll attack the eye spot, and that way the vital body is still safe. So these are some more Erebidae. And this is another small group of Erebids which I quite like. So these are called footman moths. Their scientific name is tribe Lithocini. So these all of these species, they eat lichen. I don't know if you know what lichen is. It's like a moss, but it grows on rocks. I believe in Karnataka, sometimes this is used, lichen is used as a spice in bisibelebath also. So this is a useful indicator species because lichen is very sensitive to pollution. So when you have a lot of footman moths present, that could be a good indicator that there is less pollution in that area. So one more interesting thing about footman moths is their chrysalis, is their pupa. So this is a pupa of the footman or the Lithocini. So the inside is the chrysalis, and this is the cocoon that it makes. So the cocoon, it's almost like a net-like protection that it makes around it. And this is actually the hairs which are found on the caterpillar's body. So the caterpillar pulls out the hairs and weaves this together. And these are all stinging. If you touch this, you will get an allergy or a rash kind of a thing. So this is another protection for the chrysalis inside. So when the adult emerges, it will emerge from here. It will make a small hole in this, where, I mean, in this photo, it's not visible, but it'll make a small hole and crawl out of that. The moths we have is called Crambidae. This one has a common name of grass moths. So this one often you find in grasslands or in more open areas rather than in thick jungles. This one has more than 10,000 species around the world. So this is one example. This was a very interesting moth which I found in 2012. It was actually discovered in 2009 in Malaysia. And then in 2012, I was lucky enough to find this in Meghalaya in India. So this is called a spider moth because it's believed that this one mimics a spider. So both the way it moves and the markings in its body, like this looks like spider legs. So it's believed that this one, by its markings, it scares away that other predators, thinking that, oh, it's something that could attack it. When actually this moth is completely safe. There's nothing it can do to you. But a bird or a lizard might think, oh, this is a spider which might bite me, and they may not try and eat this moth. So this is a number of other crambids. So as you can see, crambidae generally have a very consistent shape. So again, they have a very narrow forewing. They have very wide wings, and they form this triangular kind of a shape. So these moths are quite small. Most of these moths will be about a max about 4 centimeters in width from wingtip to wingtip. So there are some exceptions. So this one again is the same subfamily as the spider moth. This doesn't sit. So if you see all of them, they sit with their body, against the surface, and their wings held out on either side flat. Whereas this one sits with its forewing against the surface and its hind wing held up. And again, like I said, in Lepidoptera or in insects, you have so many individuals that you always have exceptions. So this one also is a crambid, but if you look, it is very different from all the others. So this is the exception to most of them look like this, but you have some people who don't like to follow the rules who will be different from the rest. So these those three families, the Geometridae, Erebidae, and Crambidae, these are some of the most common families, common individuals you'll come across. So last year during National Moth Week, here in our office, we did some documentation, and we found that those were the most common families. So it matched what the literature said. But now I'm going to show you some not so common families, but some of the more pretty families. So I think the most beautiful family among moths is this family called Saturnidae. So in the world, there are about 2,000 species of Saturnids. And in India, there are only about 40 or 50 species known. These are generally very large moths. So this individual, if you can see, I've put a scale underneath it. It was 1 foot. So if you see 1 foot means it's like that big. So again, this is the largest moth in the world. And it's something which, it's breathtaking. You see this moth and it is, it is very, very impressive. This entire family is normally found around forest areas. I believe there was someone had recorded one of these species from somewhere south of Bangalore as well. But these are relatively rare species. So they are found all over India, but they aren't found in large numbers anywhere. Also, normally Saturnids, in Saturnids, the males have these long feathery kind of antennae. They also often have windows or so this is the window, this is the transparent area of the wing. One more interesting thing about Saturnids is many Saturnids don't have proboscis. They don't have mouth parts. And what that means is the adults can't eat. So the adults normally live for very short time. They live for maybe 4 days or maybe max 10 days. So all the adults are interested in doing is finding a mate, mating and laying eggs. Whereas other moths might fly around for a few days or even a few weeks or even a few months. These live very, very short lives. Also, their bodies are very small compared to the size of their wings. So if you can see, the body is like a very small fraction of the entire size of the moth. So these are some more saturnids. So this is another interesting species called a Luna moth. So this one, for this particular species, there was some interesting research which found that in this picture you can't see too clearly, but here you can see the hind wing is twisted. So researchers found that these twists help it to evade bats. So if you all know, bats use echolocation. They make a sound, and by the reflection of the sound, they find out what is the position of their prey, where is it, where to attack. So because of these twists, it masks or it hides the actual location. So when the bat gets the echo back, it gets confused. So very often when you see these, like this was a very freshly emerged one, very often when you see these, one or two of these hind wings may be broken. And what that often means is a bat tried to attack it, but the bat got confused because of this. So it attacked the bottom of the wing instead of the body, allowing the adult to escape. So finally, we have this family called Sphingidae or hawk moths. So this is again compared to the other moth families, it's quite a small family. There's about 1,200 species around the world, and India has only about 200 species. This particular group, so this is a very common hawk moth. Looking at iNaturalist, there are many observations of this from not just Bangalore, all over India. This is called the oleander hawk moth because the larva eats this plant called oleander. And oleander very often is planted on the side of the road, in the middle of highways and all. So in cities especially, this is a very common plant. And because of that, this is quite a common moth. This is another interesting hawk moth. It's called the death's head hawk moth. So that is because some people say that this part here looks like a skull. It looks like the skull of a human. So this one, again, there are some interesting things about this where this moth, so lots of moths go to plants or go to flowers and they drink nectar. Sometimes they may drink the sap of trees. This particular moth, it only drinks honey, and its honey that it drinks is from the beehive. So this moth will go to the beehive and it will put its proboscis inside and it will steal the honey of the bees basically. So scientists believe that this marking is to mimic bees. So it doesn't look too much like bees to us, but it is enough that it is enough for this moth to actually go and steal honey from beehives. So these are some other hawk moths. So as you can see, they have quite a standard body plan. So they have these really long, really narrow wings, which are quite pointed at the end. They have this long cigar-shaped or spindle-shaped body, which is pointed at the end generally. And like I said, in Lepidoptera, since you have so many species, you always have exceptions. So even though Lepidoptera means they have scale on their wings, example of a Lepidoptera which doesn't have scales on its wings. So actually, this is what all Lepidoptera wings are. They're all transparent, but since this doesn't have scales, we can see it. All these others, we can't see the transparent because there's scales on top of that. Okay, so that was about moths. Like I said, there are 20,000 plus species in India. So I can't even, there's 126 families. So I can't even give you an introduction to all of the families. So I gave you an introduction to some of the most common and some of the most biggest or the most beautiful families. So now I'd like to just spend a few slides about this thing called citizen science. So citizen science is a concept where it is scientific work undertaken by members of the general public, often in collaboration with or under the direction of professional scientists and institutions. So basically, citizen science is when science is done with citizens. So if you can see from this image here, lots of these are school and college children. So these are from some of the programs that we've been conducting in Sikkim, Darjeeling, and the rest of Northeast. So basically with their smartphones, people are documenting biodiversity and they upload it onto websites like iNaturalist or India Biodiversity Portal. And by doing that, I'll show you what benefits or advantages can be there. So how to participate is very simple. At the end of my presentation, I'll show you one short video, like a 1-minute clip on exactly how to upload your observations. But basically, you take an image of anything. So it can be a plant, an animal. So since my presentation is about moths, this can especially be about moths. And moths are actually easier than most other living things to document, because for most things you have to go running after them or hunting for them in the jungle or in the park or anywhere else. Whereas for moths, if you just leave a light on outside your house in the evening and you go check in the morning, they will be waiting for you, ready for you to photograph. So what you have to do is take a photograph with your smartphone or your camera or anything. Then you upload it to these websites, either using a laptop onto the website directly, or lots of these portals have their own apps. And once you upload it, experts can come and help you identify it. And they can also give you more information about it. Depending on who you meet and how interested you are. So here are some of the benefits of participating in citizen science. One is it's an excellent engagement with science. So very often we, especially, once you're past your student phase, we always think that, oh, it's like now science was a subject in school. Once school or college is over, science also is over. There's no learning, or there's like most people don't know how to participate in it. This is one way that you can participate in actual science and contributing to science. Citizen science also allows for huge geographic coverage. So in India, the number of scientists is very small. It is not possible for everything from every location to be recorded by experts. Whereas with amateurs participating and contributing, a large number of photographs, a large number of species can be recorded from a huge area. It also encourages volunteering for a wider goal. So citizen science allows for, it's a good way to get people engaged or involved in monitoring or recording biodiversity. It's a good way of raising awareness about environmental or scientific issues. Develop new skills and insights. And also it's a way to link people to the place and their local community. So very often on TV, we know what is there in Africa, we know what is there in Amazon jungle, but we don't know what is there outside in our backyard or in our local area. So using citizen science is one way that we can actually learn about those kind of things. So this is one very interesting product which was brought out because of citizen science. So this was through a project called eBird. I don't know if many of you know it. That's a citizen science project just for birds. So on eBird, it's been going for many years, and people have been contributing bird observations from across India. So in 2020, they came out with a document called the State of India's Birds. And in this, using the data contributed by average citizens from across the country, they did a report of 867 species of birds. And for each species, they could say, okay, is the number increasing or decreasing? Is the habitat increasing or decreasing? What is the health of the species? So there's very interesting, useful biodiversity information, which was done based on so this is 1 crore observations made by average citizens. Found that 52% of the species show a clear decline, show that 52% of the 867 species, their population is decreasing. So this has been done for birds. The hope is that in the coming years, for other groups like maybe butterflies, maybe moths, maybe beetles, we can do similar kind of studies based on citizen science. So now just a few examples of huge contributors to citizen science. So one of the largest contributors, especially from the northeastern region, is this individual called Dr. Vijayanand Ismail. He's a medical doctor. He's a pediatric surgeon. And he has recorded over 14,000 individual organisms. So So it could be plants, it could be animals, it could be insects. So through he has also participated in multiple scientific publications. So he's not a researcher, but this is a publication on spiders. So these are two new species that he reported from Assam. This is a publication on a moth. And this is a publication on a bird. Yeah. Then we have Mr. Nagabhushan Jyothi. I hope he's part of this meeting. He's from Karnataka. So Mr. Nagabhushan is somebody who is, if any of you are members of the Indian Moths group on Facebook or on iNaturalist, you will see Mr. Nagabhushan is always the first one to come and identify moth species for you. He's much more an expert in moths than I am. But Mr. Nagabhushan will tell you himself that everything he learned about moths, he didn't learn in college, or he didn't learn from any books. He learned everything by participating in citizen science, by looking at other people's photographs, by putting his own photographs and watching and learning what IDs that people give him. So all of these photos you see here are actually photographs from Northeast India by Mr. Nagabhushan. But I believe he's never visited Northeast India. So he's learned about all these species while sitting in North Karnataka only. So I feel Mr. Nagabhushan is a very good example of what is possible by participating in citizen science. For example of this little girl, she's a school child from here in Sikkim only. This corona and lockdowns and everything in 2019, we did a small workshop training students about biodiversity and citizen science. Got quite interested after that. So she went out around her hometown and photographed lots of butterflies. Later, it was found that one of the species she found was a very rare species, which the experts had been looking for a long time. But she finally, this was in 2020. So she, being a I think she was in 11th standard now, and she was able to find and record this very rare butterfly species. So again, citizen science allows for everybody to participate and make a contribution to. So now coming to National Moth Week. So last year, my office, the A3 Eastern Himalaya office, we had participated in National Moth Week 2020. So we'd asked some of our staff and community members in the region to record moths from around them. On Moth Week last year, they totally recorded 289 species, 16 different people participated, and 12 locations in Sikkim and Darjeeling were represented. So this is the breakup of the species that were recorded. So 40% of the moths were from the family Geometridae, 22 were from Erebidae, 8 was from Crambidae, and then the remaining was, from the other families. So this actually, we decided to do this because this was in the middle of lockdown last year. So a lot of people were stuck at home. There was, there was very little they could do. So then we thought, okay, this is something which everyone can do. There's no, you don't have to break any guidelines or SOP or anything for this. So we encourage people to do it. We had almost 300 moths recorded. So this year we decided, okay, to encourage more people to participate. So this year it's not yet over. Today is the last day, I believe. We've recorded over 1,000, almost 1,500 moths. 48 people have recorded 1,500 moths, and over 30 locations were represented in this. So by doing this, now we have a baseline. We have a data where, so I still haven't been able to analyze the data, but in the coming days, we'll find out, okay, how many species were recorded, which species were recorded where, which species was most common, which species was most rare. So this can be useful, say, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where we can compare and say, okay, it's like, is the number of species decreasing? Is the number of individuals decreasing? This allows us to measure how is the forest doing? How is biodiversity doing? Perhaps there may be some changes which happen because of climate change. So that also we can see how the moths are responding to those kind of pressures as well through this. These are some links. Again, I will be sharing this presentation, so you all can all have a look at this. So I've linked these. So if you click on this, it will take you to these links. So there is a group called Indian Moths on Facebook. So this is a very active group. It's got, I forgot the number, but it's got thousands and thousands of people participating. And every day there are maybe almost 100 photographs which come to this group. Indian Moths group on iNaturalist, which I would recommend. This is a better group because on Facebook, you post the image and it's very hard for a researcher or for anyone to go back and see, okay, this particular species, where all has it been seen? This species, on what dates was it seen? Whereas the iNaturalist group allows you to do a lot of, allows you to analyze the data a lot better. There is also a very nice website for the National Moth Week. This is an international website. I think it's managed by a group in the US. There's a lot of short videos explaining about moths and giving you a lot of information. And also there is a book. Finally, this book, I believe, came about 2 years ago by Dr. Subbalakshmi. She is from Bombay. And this book has details about 350 different moths. So like I said, out of 20,000 moths in India, 350 is a very but still it is a, I mean, it is a start. It's an interesting book, definitely. It's a little expensive. I think it's about 3,500 rupees. But if you're interested in learning more about moths and getting more information about Indian moths, this is definitely a good book. And this link actually takes you to the Amazon page for that as well. So that's it with my presentation. Thank you all for your attention. This is just a small quote I like to use at the end of any presentation I do about citizen science. An ecologist called Baba Dioum, and it basically says, in the end, we will conserve only what we love, only what we understand, and we will understand. So basically, I take this to mean, it's like if we learn more about moths or butterflies or any group of animals around us, only then we'll understand about it. Only after we understand about it will we start to love it. And only if we love it can we conserve it. So I believe, I hope that you all found this talk useful. This is my email address in case any of you want to contact me for anything, particularly moth related. I hope you enjoyed my talk, and I hope you all have questions for me. So with that, thank you so much.
Encouraging us to participate in citizen science. Most of, like, we all, most of us like going out in the weekends or anytime going out for trekking and all, and have different organisms, and now we can actually learn more about them. Thank you for that.
Sure.
There is one question in the chat box from Rishikesh. He's asking, do moths migrate like butterflies?
Yes. So I think the wording of the question is very useful. Butterflies and moths migrate just like butterflies. So if you see, most butterflies don't migrate, but there are a few species which do migrate. So just like that, most moths don't migrate, but there are a few, I can't give you a number, but definitely there are a few hawk moths, for example, that family Sphingidae I showed you. There are some records of moths migrating from Europe to India. So there are some which migrate huge distances, much more than butterflies do. But there are also local migrations. There were, I forget the name, but there was a species which was known to migrate between the eastern and western Ghats as well. So there are a few species which migrate, but most of them don't.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's another question by Rajat Kumar. how will be the combat for mate in moths? And are there any endangered and extinct moths? And is there any park or gardens made for them?
Okay, so I'll try and get them in order. So first, I think was competition for mates.
Yes, sir. Combat for mate in moths.
So unlike say maybe deer or what else would uh, even yeah, so they don't really combat for mates, they will compete. So the difference between them is it's like two males won't fight with each other head to head and fight, but it's like they will definitely try and race to a female. For mating normal, I mean, it is always a first come first serve situation, so the moths will try and get to the female as quickly as possible. And in some instances you will see a group, you will see one female and two or three males trying to mate at the same time. So from to the best of my knowledge, they don't acknowledge the other one, they don't try and fight the other one. All three of them are just focused on the female. So combat, but they do compete. That makes sense. Then the second was endangered or extinct moths. So they're definitely, although any park or garden, including your home garden, is most likely used by moths unless you heavily use pesticides. So nothing is set aside for moths per se. But yes, there is this example of the temple in Japan. So.
Thank you, sir. I mean, there are many questions in the chat box. I hope you're okay.
So I should just open the chat box actually. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. So, okay, we finished Rajat Kumar, right? So, yes. Okay. So how moths and butterflies get the color on their wings? So as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, moths and butterflies, if you've seen dragonflies, they have these transparent wings, right? So moths and butterflies actually have the same kind of wing. Most insects have that kind of wing. It's a transparent kind of wing. It may have some veins on it like a net, which is actually what passes fluid and what supports it. The butterflies and moths, they get their scientific name Lepidoptera, because they have scales on their wings. So just like fish have scales, so fish scales are quite big. You must have seen fish scales, you can see with your naked eye. Butterflies and moths, their scales are really tiny. You need to look at it under a microscope to actually see it. But those scales, so if you touch a butterfly or moth, I don't advise you do it, because by touching it, you're actually injuring it. But if you have by chance touched it or you touch a dead one, there'll be a powder which comes on your hand. That is the scale. So if you actually, this is just for, again, I shouldn't say this because I don't want anyone to do this. But if you actually take a dead moth and you keep on rubbing it, you remove all the scales, it'll become transparent after that. So all the color of the wings of butterflies and moths is just because of the scales. Again, please don't do this with anything living, because that will, essentially you will be injuring it and you may affect its ability to reproduce or fly or anything like that. Okay. Are moths used for commercial silk production? Do silk moths belong to the Saturnidae family? Yes and yes. So silk moths actually, there are, I don't know the number of species, but there are definitely two groups of silk moths. One group which belongs to Saturnidae, which I believe that is what is used in South India and like most of the world as well. But there is another group of species, I think there's about 8 or 10 species, which is not endemic, but is especially found in Assam and Northeast India. That is called the Erie silk moth. So I don't know if you've heard of Erie silk. I may be pronouncing it wrong. I've only read it. But it's a little bit rough kind of a silk. I mean, normally when we think silk, we think of something smooth, right? This one, it feels a little bit like khadi, but it is a silk. This silk is only made in Northeast India. So, and this doesn't belong to the Saturnidae family. So this belongs to a different family called Bombycidae. So yes, moths are used for commercial silk production, and yes, silk moth belong to that family and also another family. Is there any season in which we can observe migration of moths? Oh, this is a difficult question. So the moths which do migrate, they definitely will be a season, but unfortunately, I don't know what that is. But that would be an interesting. I will try and find out that for migration, because normally migration. So for moths, their life is very closely attached to plants. So the moth survives on the caterpillar being able to eat plants, and they are not generalists. Like if you see a cow or you see an elephant, it will eat one grass one day, next day it'll eat some leaf from a tree, next day it'll eat some other tree. Whereas moths, they will always eat only one species or maximum from one genus, like 2 or 3 sister species. So especially in maybe because of rainfall, maybe because of temperature, when the host plant is not available, that will be what I assume that will be the most likely time that the moth will migrate. And I would assume that that is closely connected or correlated with seasons. So therefore, I think it's a safe assumption that there would be a season where they migrate, although I don't know which season. It will depend on, again, this question depends on where you are. Because if you're seeing a moth migrating from Eastern Ghats to Western Ghats, then the migration will be one time in Western Ghats and one time in Eastern Ghats. So you can't say, oh, it's like only in monsoon season it will be. Maybe from Western Ghats monsoon season and in Eastern Ghats winter season. So this, and again, it depends on the species as well. So this is not as easy a question to as it seems. But it would be interesting, and as we learn more about moths and their distribution, this would be this kind of information could be found out. Do moths produce sounds? Yes. So again, like I said, so many species that everyone, there are always a few exceptions. So there are a few moths which produce sounds. So if you remember, I showed you one moth called the death's head hawk moth. So which drinks honey. So that one produces 2 kinds of sounds. One is it produces an infrasound which we can't hear, but it's believed that that sound helps to trick the bees more. So I don't know if it sounds like a bee or is some sound which makes the bee think that, okay, this is not such a big danger, so we shouldn't attack it. But also, if you were to touch that moth, it will make one kee 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 noise also, which is quite scary. So that particular noise, I don't know exactly how it makes it. I've heard the noise myself, and it sounds almost like a grasshopper or a frog or something like that. And I'm pretty sure it makes that noise to scare away predators. Then many moths of the family Erebidae, they make infrasound as well, and this is to either jam the sound of bats or to trick bats. So if a bat makes a sound, I mean, there have been studies done on this. If a bat makes a sound near this moth, the moth will make a sound back, either confusing the bat, thinking, oh, this is something much bigger, I should be scared of this, I shouldn't try and attack it. Or it's like making the bat think, so it's like the moth will be flying, the bat will be flying, the moth will come here, and it'll make a sound to make the bat think, oh, the moth is actually here. So the bat will go. So there are actually videos of this on YouTube. You can see, if you look at Erebid moth tricking bat, you will see like the bat will go near the moth and attack something which is plain air. And this is because of so we can hear these sounds. These are very, very high frequency sounds. But this is a safety mechanism that some moths do. But the vast majority of moths don't do this. I actually witnessed this phenomenon yesterday morning. The female had settled on the wall and 4 males were flying all around. Yes, so moths have been found to have very, 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 very good sense of smell. So the females release this thing called pheromones, which are basically like reproduction hormones. So they're chemicals which the female release to attract males. And moths are supposed to be some of the best smellers. So a male moth, they say it's like some species, it's like for more than 2 kilometers away, they can find a female. So again, it's like 2 kilometers for an insect. This small is actually a huge distance. So the antennae in most moths, especially the feathery antennae, those aren't for like if you see a cockroach, it uses its antennae for touching, right? You must have seen it'll be moving its antennae along, or even ants, they use the antennae for touching. Moths use the antennae for smelling. So the pheromone of the female, like some studies have found even as few as 1 or 2 molecules of the pheromone. So that's really, really, really tiny. So there's no way a human or any scientific instrument also we make can't detect that. Some species of moths are so sensitive that from a kilometer away or more than a kilometer away, they can detect 1 molecule of the female and actually go and find her and mate with her. Yeah, no. So this is answer to Soumya Bhatt's question. Generally, females produce the pheromones and males are attracted to the pheromone. Now again, I don't know how well this is studied. Like I said, this being a group of rule breakers, I wouldn't be surprised if there is one male who makes the pheromone and says, no, I won't come, you come to me. But to the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any male moth which produces a pheromone to attract females. Okay, this next question is one of my favorite questions actually, by Nutan Karnik. Why moths get attracted to light? So this is a very interesting behavior. A few other insects which are attracted to light, but moths are famous for being attracted to light. The actual proper answer is, even now scientists don't know exactly why they do this. They have a number of theories. So this, first, by the way, this behavior is called positive phototacticity. So that basically, like in common man's language, that means attracted to light. The opposite of this is negative phototacticity, and an example of animal which exhibits this is cockroaches. So if you've seen, if you put on a light, like if you go to your kitchen in the night and by your bad luck, if you have cockroaches, as soon as you put on the light, you'll see them all running away. Like they're scared of light or they don't like light. They try and get away from the light, are attracted to light. So the theory which I like the best of why they're attracted to light is, this is a very, very ancient, these are ancient group of species. So until say 100 years ago, in the night, if you saw light, that means you're either seeing the moon or the stars. Like there was no street light or there was no tube light or anything like that. Moths in the night, they can't see. So navigation becomes very difficult. And they are actually in the air, and the air, for us, it's like the air looks like a still thing. It's like whether the wind is blowing or not, we can still walk in a straight line. Fluid. So if you're a moth flying in the air and the whole air is moving that side, you might think you're going in a straight line, but you might get pushed in a completely different direction. So the theory goes that moths have compound eyes. So a compound eye is an eye with many small simple eyes on it. So the theory goes that if the moth gets a light in one of its simple eyes, it will try and keep that light inside that eye. So if the wind blows it in one direction, it'll try and bring that light back to that eye. And that means it is correcting and going back. So imagine that the moth is flying and sees the moon, and the moon has fallen into, so this is the moth's eye. The moon has fallen into this one, and it can see the moon from this eye. Now, when the wind blows it, it turns that side. It will fly around so that the moon comes back here. So it's flying in the same direction. One good support for this theory is, if you notice, when a moth comes near the light, very often it will go very quickly around in circles. And the reason for that is, it is very quickly trying to bring the star or the moon, what it thinks is the star or the moon, back to its eye. In reality, in the natural world, however much the moth flies towards the light, it never gets closer, because the moon and the stars are so far away that even if it flies like 500 meters or 2 kilometers, the distance to the light is still more or less the same. Whereas when it's near a light, if it flies little one theory why they get attracted to light. I think it makes sense, but there is still, this is something which a lot of scientists are still working on, and there are a number of theories. So one other interesting thing is they found if not all moths are attracted to light. So they found that if like this was some research which I think was done in Europe, where they put a light attractant and then using radar they were observing moths. So lots of moths, lots of groups of moths would come to the light. Other groups of moths, like they were looking at it, using these instruments. So the moth would see the light and then fly in a different direction. So it's like it was not attracted to the light, but it was using the light as a signpost and saying, oh, the light is there, then I have to go left. So yeah, again, that's a long, huge, interesting subject. But yes, there's still a lot more to be learned about moths and light. Are moths attracted to fireflies? I haven't heard about this. That would be interesting to know, actually, but I don't know if they're attracted to fireflies. There are a few fireflies which are carnivorous, which eat insects. So I wonder if there are any fireflies which make lights just to attract moths. That would be interesting, but I don't know if moths are attracted to fireflies. Okay. Next, Aniruddha has, are there poisonous moths? Yes, there are poisonous moths. Most moths aren't poisonous, but there are a few which are poisonous. Very often, the more colorful, so this is not just moths, but insects in general, the more colorful ones are more likely to be poisonous because they use their color to advertise their poison. So again, sometimes the word, instead of poison, unpalatable is used. So poison generally means something which if you drink or you eat, which will kill you. Unpalatable means it tastes bad. So there are a lot of moths which are unpalatable. So there have been studies done on this as well. More studies on butterflies than moths, but these unpalatable species, there have been observations where birds will eat the species, and then after a few minutes, the bird will start vomiting. And from an evolution point of view, being unpalatable is better than for the species than being poisonous, because if you're poisonous, the bird will eat you, and then the bird will die, and then the next bird will come, that bird will eat you, that bird also will die. So it's the birds are dying and the moths also are dying. There's no learning. Whereas if you're unpalatable, the bird will eat you, then the bird will feel sick and it will vomit you out, and then the bird will learn, oh, I shouldn't eat that one makes me sick. So then that individual is dead, but the species gets protection because that bird has learned that, oh, I shouldn't eat that moth again. So there are, that's a long answer, but there are poisonous moths. Most of them are not, but some are. Okay, next, Aditya asks, how are moths affected by pollution? So by a number of ways. So during my talk, I had mentioned about the footman moths or the lichen moths, Lithocini. So they are directly affected by pollution because the caterpillar eats lichen, and lichen is very sensitive to pollution. So if the place is polluted, lichen won't grow and the caterpillar can't be there. So the caterpillar is like the baby of the moth, basically. So if the baby can't eat, then the adult can't be born. That's one. Second, there is light pollution which severely affects moths. So actually, when moths come to our lights, it's good for us because we can photograph them and put them on iNaturalist. But it's actually bad for the moth because the moth actually has lots of work to do. The moth is very busy in the night. It has to go and drink nectar. It has to go and find its mate. It maybe has to go and lay eggs. So there are many things which the moth has to do. But because of the light, it gets distracted. And once it comes to the light, it thinks it's daytime and it'll just sit under that light. So very often in that process, all the actual activities the natural activities it's supposed to do, it's not doing. So light pollution is a very big problem for moths. And this is one reason that generally around big cities, moths don't do too well. Okay. Ashwata asks, according to my knowledge, why is there not much research on moths? That's an interesting question. The honest answer is I don't know. So I think generally researchers like to do more pretty and more visible things. So I think their birds and butterflies are definitely much more studied than moths. Perhaps, I don't know if this is a reason, maybe one of the reasons could be there are just so many different species and families of moths that it's difficult for a researcher to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do and this is the species I pick. So I don't know the actual answer why there is not much more research, but I do know there are a few people like Punjab University has one professor with a number of students working in moths. Then in Calcutta, there is the ZSI Zoological Society of India, where there are a number of researchers working on moths. But definitely, I think there may be 10 times more people working on butterfly than moth. And I think that doesn't make sense because there are 10 times more butterflies than moths than butterflies. So we definitely need more people working on moths. But maybe we should look at this as a opportunity. So if the scientist is not going to work, then let's all get together and as citizen scientists, let's record and document moths and fill that gap which is there in the knowledge. Okay, Nutan says thank you. Thank you, Nutan. Most moths don't have mouth, but also how to live without eating. Okay, so that's not exactly true. So they don't have a chewing mouth part. They have the proboscis, the straw kind of thing which they roll up and keep under their body. So they use that. So moths, like I said, all moths are adults. You never have a baby moth. A baby moth is a caterpillar. Whenever you see a moth, even if it's really small or really big, all of them are adults. They're not going to grow after that. So similarly, it's like if you damage a wing or whatever, it's not going to heal. So basically, an adult moth's job is to mate for the female to lay egg. And that's about it. In the process, they may do a little pollination. They may, they will definitely feed some prey species. But most of the eating is done in the caterpillar phase. So many moths have proboscis, and from that they drink nectar or they drink tree sap. But that is just for energy. That's not for growth. So, and again, like I said, some of them don't have proboscis. So how do they live without eating anything? They live for a very short time, and in their body, they have stored fat. So it's basically like a camel, for example. All the energy they need for their entire adult life for 5 days or 10 days, all that energy is found in their body itself. So it's like as their days are going, it's like they just become thinner and thinner and finally die of starvation or die because they're eaten by something else. Okay, I think that's it for questions. If anyone else has anything else, I'd be happy to try to answer. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. There are one or two questions which I have to go and try and find out now, like particularly about the season for migration. That would be interesting, and especially if we're trying to get citizen scientists to go and record moths, maybe we can find a migration and get people to record the migration as well. So this is something I will try and research, and perhaps whatever I find out, I'll try and inform the WCG group, and perhaps they can share it on their Facebook and all that as well, if I find anything interesting. So yeah, I think that's it.
Sir, there is just one last question again from Panaga Siri. Like, if you discover a species of insect that hasn't been discovered before, how would you go about it to make it officially identified and named?
Okay, so this is interesting. I mean, it's a very important question because that is something which all of us kind of secretly have as a wish. It's like, oh, if I find something, what if it's new? How